Welcome to the Women's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Women's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Welcome. We all wonder if we're in the right profession and what we're doing with our lives. However, it's not unusual to keep reinventing ourselves, because I know I've had 8 careers in my life, but the woman that I'm about to interview has had more than 8, and some of them are really pretty exciting. Well, in fact, most of them are, or I should say all of them are. And I would like to welcome Robyn Hatcher. Welcome, Robyn.
Hi, Barry.
Hi.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. So great to have you here.
Yeah.
Now, you started out your career as an actress.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that and what happened.
Well, I started off as I moved to New York to pursue acting, and I was fairly lucky, you know, as actors go, as like young actors in New York. I started doing theater. I started doing commercials. I had a very nice career, but it's not full time. You know, it's like every once in a while you have these long gaps, and I wanted to have something more consistent. So one of the things that I did when I was looking for something to have more consistency was I started teaching English as a second language. And I taught English as a second language. I used a lot of my acting skills for that. And I started working at Barrie College, where I taught there for the adult learners. And that was a great career. And at the same time, I was still acting. I was still teaching part-time. And I had started writing a little bit because one of my acting teachers said, I couldn't find a monologue for myself. And my acting teacher said, why don't you write one yourself? So I wrote my own monologue. And then after I wrote my monologue, my acting teacher said, maybe you should write a play around it so that it has more support. And I said, okay, well, I'm not a playwright, but I had some writing chops. So I wrote a play. That play got to be extremely well received, and I had it done off-Broadway in a place in San Francisco a few years back, and then I had entered it into, I had an agent who entered it into the ABC writing contest for daytime soap operas. And I started writing for the soaps. And so I was an actor. I still had this side thing of teaching English as a second language. Then I started doing full-time soap writing for All My Children, One Life to Live. And that was really very exciting as well. Very stressful, very time-consuming, and all of that. And somewhere along the way, everything just combined, because the acting was interesting, but not as there was a lot of strikes for the unions and all of the stuff. So things started slowing down. And when things started slowing down, and I was doing the ESL, and I was getting bored doing the ESL. But what I was noticing, I was loving my students, and I was loving what I was doing. And what I wasn't loving was the structure of teaching grammar and teaching vocabulary, and then having them struggle over grammar, struggle over sentence structure, and still at that time not being able to communicate. And so I was really getting really upset about that, because I wanted my students to be able to just walk out of the street and feel comfortable communicating. And that's when I decided to create a public speaking class for my second language students. And I said, you know, I'm not going to teach, I don't want to teach English anymore. I don't want to teach the vocab, I don't want to teach the bones of English. I just want to teach public speaking. And I talked to the administrator, and she said, sure, go for it. So I took the high-level students, and I created my own class, which was just, I had them do presentations, I had them do interviews, I had them do debates, I had them do all kinds of things that were just getting the adrenaline of them being able to communicate with each other. And that gave me such a thrill. And I started studying and learning about communication and learning about public speaking and learning about presentations. And that's what I do now.
And that led to your new book called Standing Ovation Presentations.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like everybody needs to present. Even if you go into the boss to ask
Yeah.
for a raise or talk to a client, you need to know how to present.
You are presenting every single day, every second of every day is a presentation. And I like to think, and like, especially coming from an acting background, Shakespeare had that saying, all the world's a stage, you know, and it's true. And a lot of people feel as though, oh, I just have to be me. But there's more to being you than just showing up.
Now you say in your book,
Mm-hmm.
everybody has an acting style.
Yeah, an actor type.
An actor type,
Mm-hmm.
okay. What is the definition of the different ones,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you classify where you are?
Yeah.
So let's start with the different types.
Yeah, I identified 9 different types. There's the buddy, there's the hero, there's the superhero, there's the comic, there's the whiz kid, there's the sex symbol or supermodel, the curmudgeon, and the ingenue, and I'm missing something. Who am I missing? I am missing, did I say the comic? Or do I have not enough fingers? I'm missing one. What am I missing? Ah, how could I miss him? The villain.
Well, this is not a negative show, so we don't talk about negativity.
The villain has great qualities.
So
too.
what are some of the qualities of each one so that you know how to classify where you are?
Yeah, well, first I want to say that on my website there's a quiz. I developed a quiz that you can take. It's like a 5-minute quiz. You can find out exactly what your type is, and then your primary type and your secondary type and all the other types below.
And what's your website?
And my website is www.speaketc.com. It's speaketc.com. And in these types, it was so telling. It was like when I sat down to write a book, I knew I wanted to write a book on presentation skills. And the reason being is like when I was teaching, I was looking for all these public speaking books, and they were either really boring, really too much information, or not the right information, or not accessible. And I wanted to write a book that was really accessible. And so when I sat down to write it, I started thinking about all these types. Like every time I would sit down to write a dialogue for a soap character, I had to think about, like, how would that person say it? You know, she would say it completely differently than somebody else. And one of the things that I started to do as I was doing that work, writing soaps, I started thinking, okay, oh, she's like this person, like my friend or my sister or my mother. It's like, oh, she's like that. And so if I can get into that head, then I know how to write. So that's when I started to write the book, I realized, like, yeah, people come into all these different types. So, you know, if we start with the heroes, like everybody would assume that the hero is the end-all, be-all place and everybody wants to be a hero. But when you think about it, you know, the hero has a lot of charisma. You know, they walk in the room, they get attention. That's the sign of the heroes. Like, it's like when you think about it, when a movie starts and the camera comes into the movie and the lights change, because that's the hero. And that's what a hero actor type is like as well. However, what I also explain in the book is that we all have these great strengths that identify what our communication style is, but they also come with fatal flaws. You know, it's like they're not always 100% positive traits that we have.
Let's take, for example, the hero.
Right.
You say they have certain characteristics, and then you say they have a flaw.
Right.
Let's talk about the flaw first.
Exactly. So, like I said, the hero is charismatic. They have a gift for gab. They're very engaging. The fatal flaw of the hero, however, is sometimes they get so used to being able to walk in the room and get attention that they don't pay attention to the other person. They don't listen. They don't show their vulnerability. And one of the most important parts of a hero, and as a film writer too, is like I've written films and I've written for the soaps, is that you need to show vulnerability in order to have your audience follow the hero in the film. And just like in life, without what is called in archetype talk, the Achilles heel, if we can't see your Achilles heel, we're not going to be engaged, we're not going to like you, you're not going to follow you. And so the hero needs to always be aware that even though they have this wonderful quality, they need to be aware that they need to be engaging, they need to show their vulnerability, and they need to show that they care.
It sounds like a lot of dates that I've been on, where they are so self-centered.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they don't really care about anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a downside of the hero, and so that's when the hero gets gets
the bad rap.
Yeah, that's where they get the bad rap, and that's where you can get in trouble if you're not. And that's why it's so important to know what your actor type is. It's like, you know your hero. It's like when I work with people, it's like, okay, you're a hero. This is great. You've got all this great stuff going on. What you need to work on is make sure that you're listening to your other person. Make sure that you share your story, share your heart. Not just assume that people are going to know. Don't just assume that people are going to love you because you show up. You know, you have to be vulnerable. You have to share.
Is there any particular actor type that has all the great characteristics?
You know, the closest would be the hero, because if you're a really solid hero with having mitigated a lot of those fatal flaws that I just talked about, a lot of times you are so self-aware and aware of other people that you can embody the other different actor types. Another type which is really good for that is the buddy type. The buddy is the type that is so friendly and so likable and just wants to please. It's like they're really great in customer service situations. They're really good friends. You know, they'll go overboard to make you happy. In business, they'll go overboard to try to make the sale and make the customer happy. And those are great, great qualities. But of course, as you can imagine, one of the downsides of the buddy is, you know, they get walked over. They get taken advantage of.
So they have to set their own boundaries.
Yeah, they have to learn how to set boundaries, and they need to ask for what they want, and they need to not to really know what they want before they just put everything out there. Yeah, and so the reason that the buddy can sometimes, and the reason why I bring up the buddy is a lot of times in my presentations and my communication, when I think about the ideal is to know, like you said, know the best of all of the actor types and know how to use what in any given situation. And as an example, I have a slide that shows Meryl Streep, whose natural default or primary actor type is the buddy. You know, she's a really sweet, wonderful woman who loves people and is engaging and wants to please. But she can play the villain in Devil Wears Prada. She can play a sex symbol. She can play her, she's even done, I don't remember what the movie was, but she's done a role where she was a male rabbi or curmudgeon.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, I have a photo of her like that. It's hysterical. And so she has that ability to know what is called for when. You know, of course, her director tells her. But in life, we need to do that as well.
We need to do this in life after we take your tests. And figure out who we are and what our downside is. How do we not change, but how do we incorporate everything to be a better person so that everybody flocks to us?
Right, right. That's where I come in.
Okay.
Or somebody like me. You know, one of the things that I do is I work with people one-on-one in coaching situations or in group situations, and I help them to shine a light on those strengths that they have. So, and what I like to think about it as is like we all have this diamond inside of us. Some of it is still coal. Some of it is nicely polished, but can be more polished. Some of it is really brightly polished, but maybe could benefit by having a few more facets in it. You know, so it's really about finding what that diamond is and learning how to polish it. So that then what I do is I work with people on maybe it's a body language thing that needs to be changed. Maybe it's a vocal tic that you have that is not communicating the strength or the hero nature of your voice, of your presence. Maybe it's an outfit, maybe it's eye contact, maybe it's word choices that then can be tweaked so that you are then embodying the best of you.
Well, let's just say, how do you give a woman her power?
Yeah.
So, because women are so, what's the word I'm looking for? Not degraded, no, I can't even pronounce it, but they're looked down upon.
Right, yeah.
And yet they can be wealthy beyond belief, they can have all this knowledge, but yet there's something that they're not showing or exuding.
Yeah,
how do you change that?
I work with an awful lot of people like that. There are a couple of ways. You can develop confidence from the inside out or the outside in. And when I work with people, I work from both ends. And I purposely went and got a certification as a neuro-linguistic programmer practitioner, because I find it so fascinating the part that the brain plays, and what neuroscience has discovered about confidence and about communication. So there are a couple of things that I do with people. It's like I have them work on a confident-looking body language, and I know that's there's a YouTube video that has a lot of people have seen, Amy Cuddy's video, where she talks about power posing. And power posing is really just literally taking up a lot of space. And scientifically, they have proven that when you take up a lot of space and you hold it for 2 minutes at a time, your cortisol level, your stress hormone lowers, and your testosterone level rises, and you have more confidence, and you exude more confidence. So part of it is that, and the other thing that I'll do is I'll work with them on their body language. I'll work with them on their book. I have a voice in their pronunciation, their articulation, in their power. And I have, which is also in the book, certain short scenes from a movie or certain monologues from a movie. And they're all chosen because they're very emotional, they're very impactful. And so I'll have people work on that until I'm satisfied, which can make them a little crazy, which means like they have to get at an emotion that they have not experienced before. And in doing that, verbally doing that and vocally doing that, then it somehow gives them permission. And what happens is that the neural pathway in your brain that says, oh, I'm going this way, all of a sudden says, oh, you know what, I could go this way. And the more that you practice and work at going this way, the neural pathways in your brain start to move and create another path that is an option for you when needed.
It almost sounds like an affirmation.
Yeah.
That you have to do daily. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you were holding your hands out, mm-hmm. you're taking all this room up.
Yeah.
How do you do this? I mean, you physically can do it, but right. How do you do it vibrationally?
Yeah, you can do it physically, and once you do it physically, the vibrations start to, because the hormones change and you start to do it vibrationally as well.
So you're saying that I should just
when
keep
you
my
hold
hands?
it, yeah, for 2 minutes, 2 minutes at a time, and then when you've, at the end of that 2 minutes, you've changed the chemistry in the chemistry makeup in your body for, I don't know how long it lasts, but it lasts a while. And then the more you do that, the more activated that chemical series is. The other thing I was just reading recently is about breathing from your heart. You know, breathing, really visualizing breathing from your heart and really opening that up. And that whole idea of visualization is so huge too. Before any kind of event or any kind of, one of the things I do with my clients who have these issues is to really figure out how do you see yourself? How do you, what does it look like when you're confident? And this is a whole neuro-linguistic programming part, but I do it in conversational. I don't go the whole hypnotic route all the time, but it's like, how do you visualize yourself? What does it look like when you're confident? And I had one client who was dealing with that, and we started talking, and she started visualizing Wonder Woman.
Oh, how fabulous.
Like, yeah. She's like, yeah, she's Wonder Woman. And like, so yeah, bring out that Wonder Woman. What is Wonder Woman wearing? What does she look like? What does your hair look like when you're Wonder Woman? What color does Wonder Woman wear? You know, all of that stuff is stuff that you can use as fodder to then like, okay, I'm going into that meeting. No, I'm not going in that meeting. Wonder Woman's going in that meeting, and I'll catch up with her on the other end.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. One of my archetypes is the superhero Wonder Woman.
Let's go back and define superhero.
Yeah.
Superhero woman.
Superhero.
And what are the flaws on that then?
Well, a superhero is, when you think of a superhero, the superhero is that kind of a woman or man who, like, okay, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to fix everything. It's like you want to think of Batman, he runs in and he saves the day. Superman runs in, Wonder Woman, all of they run in and save the day. And so they're high energy, they get things done, they're great, great people, great workers, great entrepreneurs that get things done. But they often go into a room and try to put out a fire and there wasn't a fire. It was just a cigarette, or just a candle. It's like, so it's like they're bringing in all their stuff. It's like, oh, okay, you're lighting a candle? So superwomen and superheroes need to really know what's important and what's not. They need to really be able to read a situation more clearly and not use a hammer when all you need is a staple. Those are the kind of things that superheroes need to figure out. It's like everything isn't an emergency. They need to breathe. They need to take time and say, okay, let me just listen first, and then I'll try to fix. Now, a lot of times superheroes was like, oh, I know exactly what you should do.
You also talk about exuberance and class. Define that. Exuberance
and class. Yeah, I believe that everybody should have exuberance, and but everybody doesn't see, and that's why the typing is so important, because as a hero I can be exuberant, and it's not exactly, and as a ingenue I can be classy, as a supermodel I can be classy. So I don't feel like, I don't remember what I said about that, but right now what's coming to mind is that they may be two sides of the same coin, and you want to know which one to use and when not to use it. Because you don't, and sometimes when it comes to smiling, when people think, oh, we need to smile all the time, it's like sometimes you can have a really soft, restrained smile, and sometimes you can be really, really exuberantly smiling.
You state that there are 3 methods of effective communication.
Right.
But you also mention a 4th one.
Yes.
Explain and tell us.
Yeah, there are 3 major things go into any communication. You've got the visual component, you've got the vocal component, and you've got the verbal component. So that is everything that is seen, everything that is heard, the sound of your voice, the tone, the accent, all of that, and then the words that are uttered. Now, research after research has proven that the most important parts of those communication are the nonverbal, which is the visual and the vocal, what we see and what we hear. There are many reasons for that. And so those are the main 3 that everyone talks about. But I add a 4th, which to me is really almost as important, and that is value. What is your personal value, and what do you value in life? And what value do you bring? What value do you espouse? And I feel like when you know that part, and then marry that with your visual, your vocal, and the verbal, then you've got a really complete communication package, as it were. And that's, when we're talking about personal branding, I do workshops on personal branding and presentations on personal branding, and it's like, that's what it means to have a personal brand. When you marry what you value, the value that you bring, with the way that you're communicating visually, vocally, and verbally, then that becomes a strong and consistent personal brand.
Can people trip up with themselves when they're coming up with a brand?
Yeah, you can, because a lot, and the thing that trips people up the most is wanting to be what you think people want you to be. And I'll give you an example. When I first started branching out this way, I've been an actor, I've been a writer, all these creative things, and I started working with corporate people, and so for the longest time, I didn't want to tell anybody I was an actor. I thought that was going to cheapen me or something, or belittle me. And at the same token, I would show up, I would go shopping to buy suits, either gray or blue suits, and I would show up in those. And after a while, it didn't take me too long, especially with the clothing. I realized it's like, this is so not me, because I would, I might go up to a meeting with this blue suit, but I'm working with you, and I'm being really creative, and I'm in your face, and I'm being engaging and laughing and have a sense of humor, and it doesn't match. So it's like, what my brand is not a suit. And if you want somebody whose brand is the suit, there are plenty of people out there whose brand is the suit, and they'll be fine for you. But that's not me. So I should not show up looking like that, or else people will get a mixed message and I won't be as effective as I am.
And you're not being authentic to yourself.
Right, exactly.
It's always been said that the first 15 seconds of meeting somebody gives a person the impression of that will last probably a lifetime.
Yeah.
And yet, it's harder to change that. I mean, people can catch you at bad times. How do you finesse into changing somebody's mind about you?
Well, the easiest thing to do is to make a winning first impression. and that is one of the hardest things, because I have a statistic, I heard a statistic that it can take up to 12 visits to undo a negative first impression. And that's horrifying, because there are very few people that are going to meet you and then decide to give you 11 more chances to impress them. But but occasionally I'm working with a couple of clients now that they want to change the way that their company perceives them, because they got off on the wrong foot. So the things that you need to do is visually start to change very completely. You know, so for one of my clients, I'm doing mostly assertiveness training with her. You know, so she needs to shorten some of the things that she says, like make them very direct, use a tone of voice that is direct and very powerful, use language that is very powerful, and take out a lot of that weakness. She needs to stand up, you know, whenever you're meeting somebody, she needs to stand up straight and really look them in the eye, or if they're really intimidating, look them in the forehead. But those are the things that another gentleman I'm working on with the same thing, that was one of his first questions, like, they all see me as this, how am I going to change their minds? It's like, and one of the things to do again with him is to repeatedly act in a certain way. You know, you repeatedly act in this new way, and eventually, if you're very committed to it and if you do it repeatedly, people will then catch on. It's like, oh, there's something different, and that little bit of something different. The other thing is, like, you can neurologically convince them that you're changing by saying things like, oh, I'm so different, I feel so different, I feel so this, I feel so that. So you can prime them a little bit that change is coming. You prime them so that they basically don't feel uncomfortable. There's something different they can't identify. Right. So if you prime them, then they're more at ease, more comfortable. Yeah. You mentioned, Robyn, it's important to dress for the type of person you are. Right. But after taking your tests, how do you know really who you are and how to dress? I mean, if you want to be a power player. Right. Let's start with that. If you want to be a power player. Want to be a power player. First of all, like once you take the test, and I give you a breakdown, a small breakdown, but in the book it goes into detail about some of the things. I also have a list in the book of vocabulary words, just positive words that you can use to identify yourself and to find out, is this me, this me, this me? How can I use these words? And there are some tips about how, like polling friends about, like, what are the first few words that come to mind when they see me? And speaking of fashion, like, I have a very good partner now who we do presentations together, and she's a fashion stylist. You know, so she will, I will do the presentation part, and then she'll talk about how some of those types can then work in the fashion world. You know, what are some of the styles that marry some of those types? And so what you really want to do when you want to make a presence is put all that together. It's like, you don't always have to go out and hire my friend Tanya Sterl, who's great as a stylist, or you don't have to go to me all the time. But what you can do is to look at that list and say, okay, these things. And I have it in the book, like exercise that you can do. And then you go through magazines and think about, okay, those are my positive qualities that I want to identify. This is what I want to project. Would that translate into a fabric? How would that translate into a color? how, like in those colors and fabrics, how does that translate into structure? So an example for me is like you'll see, like right now I'm wearing something very bright. That's part of my personality. I'm always going to be wearing a bright color. And that doesn't mean like when I go into a corporate, I probably wouldn't wear this in corporate. However, what I would wear is a blouse that might have a bright color, or a jacket. I have a red, deep red jacket that I wear a lot. You know, and that's going to show that I have this dynamic quality. I also have, it's slightly tailored, you know, so that then I can also hone it in if I need to. You probably won't see me much in very, very structured clothes because I'm much more flowy. So, you know, it's like instead of jackets, I'll have looser sweaters, you know, instead of those lapels that go like this, I'll have a lapel that goes like that. You know, so there are things that I can see about myself in fashion that will then give myself presence. And I think individuals can do that. And the most important thing is to not do the one-size-fits-all method of, oh, that's my competition, that's what she wears. But, and I think about that with actor types as well, in the fact that you have your own unique body. You have your own coloring, you have your own hair coloring. You can't wear what the person sitting next to you can wear. And just like that's the same as communicating. You know, we're all so uniquely individual that what might work for your friend over there is not going to work for you. And to know yourself well enough to know and to hire somebody to be your mirror for a second and say, okay, that looks good on me, that doesn't.
The honest person.
Yeah.
The honest, objective person versus going into a store with it.
Yeah.
Oh, you look lovely in there.
Fabulous.
Oh, yes.
I know. I said this to somebody, is that I don't sugarcoat, but I'm sweet.
That's a great comment.
Yeah.
You mentioned if you're giving a speech, not to go over 7 minutes. All right, so you've got 7 minutes to really fine-tune your speech.
Mm-hmm.
What exercises would you do before you give your speech,
mm-hmm.
and how can you consolidate what you have to say in 7 minutes?
Yeah, 7 minutes. Where is it? 7 minutes probably the beginning of the speech. So if it's 7 minutes and like the top of your speech, what you want to do is you want to really hone in and figure out what your bottom line is. People forget 40% of what you say in an hour. So what you want to think about before you deliver any type of communication is if there is one thing that person, I need that person to remember, what is that one thing? And when you hone down your presentation or your communication to that one thing that, you know, it's like that riff in a song. It's like if they walk out, this is what they're going to remember. Then you take that one thing and you build support around it. You know, you have your, what I call the bottom line. I've created and I was doing a workshop once and I came up with this little figure that I call communicate. And she's like at the head is her bottom line. And then you have 2 or 3 statements that support that bottom line. And that's the body. And then you've got these 2 legs, and one leg is emotional and one leg is logical. One leg is emotional support, the logical leg is logical support. And emotional support meaning how is it going to make me feel? What is it going to make the listener feel, do, or think, you know, in an emotional way? Is it going to make me feel like I'm better than the person next to me? Is it going to make me feel like I can make money? Is it going to make me feel like I can save money? Is it going to make me feel like I can save time? Those are all the sorts of emotional supports. Then you have to have the logic, because then there are the people that think logically. It's like, but does it work? And how does it work? And when does it work? And what? So those are the logical, rational reasons that you have to have. And that combination, that little triangle of the bottom line, that your overall message, 2 or 3 statements that support that message, and finding out the emotional and logical reasons for that message. You really want to think about, and the most important part of that is what are you going to give that person? So many times we go to build a presentation or build a communication, and it's all around, what am I going to build? What am I going to say? But the most important part is, how am I going to change the person that I'm talking to by the end of this conversation? When you have that in mind, that's going to be part of your bottom line. How am I going to change that person? Then you have that support.
I'm mesmerized. I think this is fabulous. I got to remember the bottom line and the body is basically what it is. Two legs and a body. Robyn, in the closing moments of the show, what would you like to leave the audience with?
I want people to be engaging, and that whole part of, the other whole part of that presentation that I leave out is like, always get that attention getter, always get their attention first. It's very rare that I will, well, never will I start a presentation with, I'm going to talk to you about. I'm never going to introduce myself with, hi, my name is Robyn Hatcher. Those are two of the most boring sentences on earth, and we've heard them over and over again. So you always want to think about what you're giving, how to get their attention, how to make them perk up, how to be engaging, and to be authentically you. Don't always think about what you have to give. We all have something to give. One of my reasons for doing what it is that I do is I feel as though we all are on this earth to give something. So we have to figure out what it is that we have to give, and we have to give it as powerfully and as authentically as we can in the way that we are meant to do it.
Wow. Robyn, thank you so much for joining me. It's been
Barrie.
Fabulous, and I've learned so many different things. Now I've got to go figure out what type I am.
I know.
And I hope you've enjoyed yourself and learned something too. Let me know what type you are. Look forward to hearing from you. Bye now.